Georgia loses, everybody's pissed off, and we've got a season to play. So I've got just one question for you. Do you think that Kirby Smart is regressing? Do you think he's forgotten how to coach? We're going to talk about that and a lot more on this edition of How About That Dogs Cast, which of course is powered by Alumni Hall. Our friends over there, they provide the ultimate Bulldog shopping experience. Alumni Hall has the largest and best collection of Georgia Bulldog apparel, accessories, tailgate gear, and gifts. Save 15% everywhere, in-store, online, or on the app with my exclusive code HBTFD15. Students and members of the military score 10% off every day, and when you join the Hall Pass Rewards program, those points, they never expire. Alumni Hall, where dogs shop. Alabama is what it is for the Georgia Bulldogs. And nobody wants to lose ever. But tonight I want to take a moment, and just remember exactly where we are and how we got here. And more importantly, where it is that we have to go. Because whether we like it or not, this season keeps rolling. I've had people who wanted to get their points out in the comments this week across all of my social media, the various videos. And of course, when you lose, people are going back to videos from 2 years ago and making sure that they share their current opinion about the state of play regarding Georgia football. We're going to move ahead in the season. But before we can do that, I think we have to put the last week to bed the right way. And of course, here on the channel, we do that by taking a look back at what happened on the field last Saturday. Now, let's just begin this thing by saying that I felt, being on the field, that the crowd did a really, really good job of showing up, being loud, participating before the game, during the game, and right up until the very end of the game. So there were points in the game where it was so loud, I made a rookie mistake and didn't take ear protection, and it hurt to be down at field level. But I've said it 100 times on this channel that you can do everything right. But even if you don't, sometimes another guy just wins. He's just better. And that's what we saw, especially in the first half last Saturday. Ty Simpson came into the game hot as a firecracker and stayed that way. He had a couple of touchdown passes, made all the right reads, and then Georgia helped him, and they turned the football over and hold Alabama to a field goal before they actually got things rolling. And this points to a bigger issue that Georgia's dealing with right now, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But Alabama, of course, wasn't going to go away. They were going to come with their very best effort, as they always do when they play the University of Georgia. And they only got one score in the second half, which was the one you just saw there from Ty Simpson. But they were out in front far enough to where even with Georgia battling back, they couldn't get all the way back. We saw some things that should make Bulldogs happy. Like we saw Dylan Bell get involved in the offense. We saw big man Josh McCray continue to do what he does in short yardage situations, as evidenced by this touchdown that's on the screen now. And the Dogs had a chance to win this thing late. Fourth down stop there at midfield, but then it was the youthful inexperience that reared its head. Talon Taylor drops a certain touchdown pass. Execution from a veteran like Zach Branch there, dropping a pass that not only would have been a first down, but potentially a huge play. They still had a chance to get it done, but then it comes down to the fourth down play. And here's the thing, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more. This play, however you felt about it, and I made my opinion on it clear earlier this week, is actually not a bad play for the University of Georgia. And if it were executed correctly, Cash Jones walks into the end zone. And if you don't know everything that I've shared about how I felt about that play and how we got there and who was involved, please go back and watch my earlier video where I laid it out for you. But the bottom line is, that Saturday night, Alabama did a little bit more and came into Georgia and got the victory. And that is what it is. But see, here's the thing. Kirby knows the situation. He understands it. He doesn't need me or anybody else to explain it to him. And not only does he understand this situation and the way it looks, the way it feels for Dog Nation this week, it brings me to the discussion of, do you think that Kirby Smart is not leading the Dogs in the right direction here? Do you really believe that his decision-making is regressing? The same coach that just within the last 5 years has won back-to-back national championships. As I mentioned, that play on 4th down with Cash Jones, if you don't remember or you didn't see it, just really quickly, I'll walk you through it. They had decided prior to that play that if they got any yardage at all on 3rd down, they were going to go for it on 4th down. That was a decision that was already made. So when Gunner came up just short of getting that 1st down, they already knew that they were going to go tempo, which is something they hadn't done in the game and is something that had been effective for them all season long. Now, not only did they have it because they felt good about it, they knew what they wanted to do, Alabama completely busts the defense, and they were misaligned. So if executed correctly, then Cash Jones is one-on-one with a safety in a race to the front pylon. My money's on Cash Jones on that play. The thing about it, though, and I've spoken about this a lot here on the channel, is that due to circumstance, both big picture and small picture, Georgia had 2 freshmen on the right side of the offensive line on that play. Everybody else did their job. Dontrell Glover and Juan Gaston did not work well enough together on that play to seal that block. So you have a run through, he gets 2 fingers on Cash's heel, and it's enough to trip him up. And the result is what the result is. So you have to ask yourself, Kirby Smart and his staff had a plan in place. They had it organized, and they knew exactly what they were going to do in that moment. They already had a plan. This was not just something he pulled out of thin air. Cash Jones was in the game because he's the 3rd down back. This is all part of the bigger process. So if you want to question personnel, or if you want to question the decision to not take the points, if you want to question the play call itself, just understand how we got there and why it happened the way it happened. Because if Dontrell Glover just goes face up on the guy in front of him, seals his gap because Juan Gaston had shoved his man down, if Glover simply makes that block a basic block and allows Gaston to climb up to the backer, then we're probably talking about a touchdown run by Cash Jones in a crucial moment in the game, and everyone is hailing Kirby Smart as a brilliant head coach, and the Georgia Bulldogs are top 2-3 teams in the country. We don't even have to get there. If Talon Taylor simply catches the ball, he walks into the end zone with a go-ahead score. Now, we don't know if Alabama would have come back and scored again and won the game. We just don't know. Given the questions that Georgia's defense has had this year, that very possibly could have happened. But the way it played out, Georgia didn't have the opportunity to find out if they could have won, right? Because they never gave themselves the lead. They never gave themselves that foothold. Then, of course, on the last possession, they don't stop the run when they need to, and they make silly errors, which cost them in penalties. And when you do those things, you don't win. There are 2 points here. One, you can't really talk about that one anymore. That's why I'm done with it after this point, for all intents and purposes, because we got to move on to the next game. And in the new world of college football, one loss is what it is. Nothing has changed. You have to go win the rest of your games. Now, if you want to look at what's happened so far and say, well, it reshifts how I view what Georgia can do the rest of this year, that's completely fair. That's completely fair. I said before the season, Georgia was probably a 9-3 football team. There are voices out there right now that are saying 8-4 is more likely than 10-2. I'm not going to push back super hard on that. That just is what it is. That doesn't mean, though, that the process, the superstructure that's in place in Athens, is all of a sudden faulty or crumbling or brittle. I don't believe that. I believe that Kirby Smart and his staff had a plan in place, and if executed, it works out differently. You might not have liked it on Saturday. You might not like it today, but that same sort of aggressive play calling, go for the throat kind of thing in those key moments has won Georgia a lot of games. It's won them a national championship, at least one. The through line among all this is that this team and every other college football team across the land is living and working in a different college football. And therefore, what you see on the field, well, the margin for error is super small. Again, I want to encourage you to go back, watch the video I did earlier this week. I'll talk about all of that a lot more in depth. But tonight, I just want to remind you, it hurts. Nobody likes to lose. The sky's not falling. Is Georgia the same dominant team that they were a few years ago? No, they're not. But today, when I look around, nobody else is either. You just have to play these games out, coach your players up and get them better, and then see where you are when we get to November. That's just how we're going to have to play this thing out. And next up for the Georgia Bulldogs is the Kentucky Wildcats. Now, I actually posted this week a question over on the YouTube community page, and I asked, what is it that you want to see Georgia do better in this game? And before I get to the answer, I have to call out one response that I got, which was that nobody cares about Kentucky. Everybody's going to be watching Vanderbilt, Alabama. Who cares about Kentucky? I very politely responded, actual Georgia Bulldogs fans do. That's who cares about Kentucky, because if you're invested in this team and in this season, then you want to know the answers to the questions which I posed in that original poll, which is, what do you want to see them improve on? And there is so much for Georgia to get better at right here. Even if they had won the game, I would sit here and tell you that there's so much more that they need to get better on. They have to continue to improve. If you're not new to this channel, you know I've been saying that for months. Youth has to grow up. That's what we're seeing. Glover, Gaston, Robinson, DeMello Jones. I could go on. We are seeing it in real time, and it is not always pretty. So I'm invested in what happens against Kentucky on Saturday. Now, as far as Kentucky, the football team, it's no secret they're not really good this year. They have the same mentality that they've always had under Stoops, which is they want to be physical, they want to run the football, and they want to just sort of beat you up, right? They want to control the clock. They want to keep the ball away. In years past, they have had better defenses than they have this year. So that's the first thing that jumps out to me about this team. The second thing, especially based off what I've been hearing from other Kentucky people that I talk to, is that we know they can run the football, they're going to run the football, and they're going to be stubborn about it the same way Georgia is. We know that their quarterback is someone that they have high hopes for, but has looked less than confident at times this season, to say it mildly, and they really can't threaten you, or at least have shown no opportunity, no real threat at pushing the football down the field. So as a Georgia fan, when I look against what they have to go through this weekend, Cutter Boley out there for Kentucky taking snaps, I'm like, well, Georgia has an issue, or has shown an issue in the defensive secondary and getting after the passer in terms of what they can do defensively against the pass. So when it comes to Cutter Boley in Kentucky this week, the main thing that I want to see them do is get him on the ground. Because if there's no real threat down the field, then I want to see our defensive backs and linebackers, I want to see them cover up Kentucky's receivers, make Boley hold the ball, and then I want our defensive linemen or our edge guys to get him on the ground. We are this far into the season, and Georgia still does not have a sack from its defensive line. Numbers can be deceiving. But the fact of the matter is, I need to see it. And this is the perfect opportunity for it to be seen. If Cutter doesn't know where to go with the football, he's a little hesitant, a little scared, and His guys can't get open against what I feel safe in saying is a more talented secondary man for man than what Kentucky has at wide receiver this year, then that means he's going to have to hold the football, which should give that pass rush time to actually be effective. So I want to see Cutter Boley on the ground. As I mentioned, they are going to run the football. One of the long bright spots for Kentucky this year is Seth McGowan. Transfer running back has come in and done a fine job. I mean, he's run the football well. And if there was a bright spot against South Carolina last week, it was his effort. So they are going to continue to try to run the football. So I want to see Georgia keep doing what it is that they've done so far this year, and that is stop the run. If you can stop Seth McGowan in Kentucky's run game with a couple of tackles and an offensive line as a whole, which I would say is not up to the Kentucky standards that we know, then you make them one-dimensional. And that brings me right back to my point about putting Cutter Boley on the ground. Get him on the ground, because if you can handle what Kentucky wants to do on the ground, then you have a chance to make hay in the pass game. So when I watch this Georgia and Kentucky game this week, that is quickly what it is I'm going to be looking for. The Dogs, when we come into this one, there's a lot for Kirby Smart and his staff to do. They have to build this team by holding them together. You may have noticed when DeMello Jones was walking off the field there at the end of that video, I was right there. I heard Kirby say to him, the most important thing to do is keep this team together, because he knew what was coming. It was going to be coming from every angle. Everybody was going to have something negative to say about them, and they had nothing more important to do than pull in together, work, and get better. And that's what he was saying to DeMello as they walked off the field. And don't misunderstand the challenge that's coming on Saturday. Kentucky is an SEC team, but the challenge I'm talking about is not necessarily this Kentucky team. Georgia should handle this Kentucky team. They come into the game almost a 3-touchdown favorite. Now, again, I don't care so much for the lines, but it just gives you a perspective on how other people view this game. Georgia should get this W. So if we're going to take that at face value, then here is the struggle that I'm looking at. We're coming off a late game on Saturday night, an emotionally draining game for the fans, a loss. And then we're turning around and having a noon kickoff the next week against a team that everyone in the world is going to point to and say, Georgia should beat that football team. Now, I talk a lot about the mental part of the game and what youth can do to you. This is the classic spot where Georgia would could show up, play uninspired football in the first quarter, the first half, and be messing around with Kentucky 7-0, 10-7, maybe it's 10-7 Kentucky by some twist. That could absolutely happen because the fans, they were so invested in last week's game. I fully expect that for an early kick in a game that people aren't super jazzed for, this is going to be a flat game in terms of how the fans come into it. It shouldn't be, but I can totally see how it will be. The question is, will this young football team come out flat? Can Kirby and his staff get them pulled back together and focused on the work at hand, the process, so that they'll show up and come out and play fast early? That's a tall order because, and I want to talk about this more here in just a second, but that's going to be a tall order because one of the things we've seen from Georgia over the last year or so is that they just simply aren't starting fast. There are arguments to be had about that. There are points to be made, but it is frustrating as a fan. And I promise you it's frustrating as a player, right? Because they work all week to come out and execute. And then when you don't do that, well, then you get in your own head about it potentially. And that's even more a possibility when you have a young football team. So Kirby and his staff have it in front of them this week to get out there, get the guys ready, get them fired up, and have them come out and play fast. And that's going to be a big deal, I think. But I wouldn't bet my money on the fact that they will, because this is a classic low energy scenario. And I know Kirby and the fire, passion, and energy mantra that the players had all summer. I am fully aware of all those things, but the circumstances are what they are. And if Georgia comes out and executes at a very high level early, do not let it be lost on you what a great job that means that the coaches and the players have done to get themselves in position to go out and do that. If they come out and execute crisply and they put the ball in the end zone and they shut the Kentucky Wildcats down in the first quarter, first half, if that happens, then you should feel super good about this football team. You should feel super good about the effort that they've put in and their ability to grow up and take care of business. That's a tall order. It's a tall order because, and this fact may or may not surprise you, but the last time Georgia had a lead at the half against a Power 4 opponent was back on October 19th of last year at Texas. This idea of a slow start is very real. And then you pile in everything I just mentioned. And the recipe is such that we're going to see a sleepy start on Saturday. But let's hope we don't. And if we don't, then I think we need to acknowledge that for what it is and give credit where credit is due. There are things I can't say on YouTube, but I say them on How About Them Dogs Plus. Want to learn more? Just click the link below. Go premium. Be elite. Adversity is a part of football, and you never know how it's going to show up. Sometimes it's injury. Sometimes it's a loss, which is what we saw on Saturday night. And like I said, there are a lot of people who want to throw rocks. Understandable. It's okay to be frustrated. Everybody's frustrated. The thing is, I can't do anything to make them perform any better on Saturday. That's up to the coaching staff. That's up to the players to make a decision that that's what they want to do. And again, adversity comes in all forms, but Kirby stepped to the mic this week and he uttered a phrase, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but he said, "We're built for this. We know what it looks like when you take a loss and then you move through the rest of your year." Meaning that he believes that they know the way forward. They know how to right the ship, get the troops ready, and go out there and continue to chase their goals. He believes that they know how to do that. And that's fantastic, except for the fact that this team is so young. So now you're having to coach them up and bring a young team, not a veteran team, not a team that's already done it once or twice, but a young team. Bring them out there and see if you can get them up to that point, get them to execute that way. So that is one of the levels of adversity that they're facing this week. But obviously there was a huge level of adversity when Talon dropped that ball last week. Because if they make that play, again, it could have changed the entire outcome of what we saw the rest of the way. Or maybe it was the play with Cash. Again, he did all he could to separate himself from Overton, but he got just enough. And again, Cash was running right at me. If it's not for two fingers, we're having a different discussion, and we might not be talking about any of this stuff. I probably still would have brought up the point about, the fact that it's a sleepy start and all that, and they've got some stuff to overcome, but we wouldn't be talking about Georgia losing their fastball. We wouldn't be talking about a changing of the guard and the chaos that is going on inside the SEC. We wouldn't be talking about all those national stories in the college football playoff and whether the Dogs can still get in. We wouldn't be talking about that because the Dogs would be sitting right up there with a win over a team that they really wanted to get a win over, and they would be in the top 2 or 3 teams in the country, and, it'd be all hunky-dory. We might be a little concerned, but overall, we'd be feeling good knowing that we had Kentucky and some other teams that they think they can beat coming. So it all matters. But here, as we move forward in the year, I've already talked about it a little bit. I want to see Georgia actually show me that they're built for this. And I'm looking at the defense because I understand that the defense is young, and I understand that you've got new players out there doing it all for the first time, but there are things that are considered staples of Georgia's defense that I just haven't seen. And again, I come right back to that pass rush. I know guys have to learn how to win, but this is a team, and I laid it out earlier, where you should be able to show me what it is that I need to see from this defense on Saturday. You should show me that you can hold this team under 10 points or shut them out. You should be able to show me that you can get after the passer. This is not a get-right game in the classic sense, but it is a game where there is an awful lot for Georgia to put on display for all of us fans out here. And depending on how they show up, it's going to shift a lot about how we talk about this team moving forward. There might be way more people coming over on board with me that this is a 9-3 team. Or maybe they show up, hang 28 on Kentucky in the first quarter, and are just smothering the Wildcats on defense. And then we're having a completely different discussion. That's why this game matters. So I'll bring you back to that commenter. Who cares about Georgia and Kentucky? Dogs fans care. There's so much to watch. There's so much to keep an eye on. But let's look at the other side of the ball. I mean, we've been talking about the defense and their failures and their adversities and all those sorts of things. But let's take a look at the offense and say, I want to see you go do the things that we all thought you could do back in the summer. I want to see bombs away. You have dudes at wide receiver. I understand that we can run the football. I understand that we have been running the football, and it would be easy to say, let's run it 40 times. Let's get everybody their touches, throw it 20 times, and get out of here with a win. But coming off a loss like we had against Alabama, I think you have to turn the page and crank the dial. I think you have to understand who you have outside. You have to understand the matchups that you have against the Kentucky defense that, and again, no disrespect, just isn't good. You have better guys. You are a better offense than Kentucky is a defense. I want you to show me that on Saturday. I want you to let Gunner throw it 30, 35 times. I want you to go up and over that Kentucky defense. I want Colby Young to get his shot. I want you to go back to Talon Taylor, because that kid's going to be a great football player for the University of Georgia if he stays. But if I'm Talon, and I'm shooting off the cuff here. If I'm Talon, I want to know that we're going to throw the ball down the field so I can go make a play. Give me another shot. Let me go do it. Let me prove it. Because the kid won. He won. He was wide open. You don't get wide open without winning. And Georgia having wide receivers that can win one-on-one matchups like that, that's what the entire fan base has been craving. So now that we know you have them, throw it to them. I get that you want to run the ball. But think back to what I said about a get-right game. Not in a classic sense, but I want you to show me. If you're embarrassed as a Kirby Smart or as a Georgia Bulldogs team by what happened on Saturday, and they're not, I'm not saying they are. They're not embarrassed. Fans might be. The team is not. But if you aren't happy with the perception of your team, one of the ways you can make that right this week is to go out there and do what I'm talking about. You do what you want to do. You run it when you want to, and you throw it when you want to. And Gunner, you got to let it go down the field too, my man. That's what this is. I want to see you be explosive. I want to see you build some confidence, because the schedule is in your favor the rest of the way. But you will not get those victories moving down the line if you do not do the work now to build the foundation and house that will allow you to feel confident enough to go win those things when the time comes, to make the plays when you have to. We know that it can be done. We've seen it at Tennessee. I just want you to show up and do it for me. Show me against an SEC opponent that you don't mind hanging 14 or 17 on the board in the first quarter. You can do it. Show me, Nate Frazier. Show me that you can break through the initial line of scrimmage, protect the football, and have a full game. We've seen a half here, a quarter here. Show me. That's what I think this game is for Georgia. I think this game is a game where they can show up, be explosive, build some confidence on the offensive side of the ball, and carry that forward so that when the schedule does you favors in the future and Ole Miss comes to town, which is going to be a pain in the foot simply because of who they are and what they do, and Texas comes to town where you think, yeah, we might have to score 30 in that game. I don't know that our defense is going to score this year the way they did last year, so we need to be able to go score the football. This is how you do it. That's what I want to see from the offense. And again, on the defensive side of the ball, I want you to continue to stop that run game, which is the one thing that Kentucky does pretty well. And I want you to get after the quarterback and put him on the ground. Georgia's roster is better than 98, 99% of the teams they're going to play, but it's not a lot better. It's good enough in this instance to be able to leverage that talent and produce the kind of game I'm talking about on the field on Saturday. And again, I want to remind you, before we put a bow on it here, it's going to be a challenge. Kentucky will come out and attempt to play physical. I just don't think they have the pieces necessary to do what they need to do against Georgia. So I want to see Georgia not middle around with them, not let it be close. I want to see them show up and handle business on offense and defense. And I want them to show me that they're growing up and that they can overcome that sleepy start, which I'm telling you, friends, that's what I'm expecting. So if they show up and it's sleepy, then that's what I'm looking for. I'm like, yep, there it is. And we look ugly. And this is, nobody's going to be satisfied if that's how it goes. But they have an opportunity to show up here and say, nope, kickoff's at noon. We're sharp at noon. And we're going to go out and execute this thing. And we're going to get after Kentucky. And we're going to look like Georgia. Not for me, for themselves. Anything that you and I feel as fans is just a byproduct of how the team plays. So I want to see them show up and handle their business. Kirby Smart, does he still know how to coach? I think so. I think we're going to continue to see this team improve as we go down through the fall because that's what young teams do. They grow, they learn, they improve. All you have to do is look at the first half against Alabama versus the second half against Alabama. In particular, look at somebody like Ellis Robinson, number one corner in the country, number one player in the country in his recruiting class. First quarter, looked lost, looked like he didn't belong on the field at all. Second half, different guy. DeMello Jones, same thing. It's called press man for a reason. You get up, you put your hands on dudes, and you make them beat you. You play sticky. Didn't do that in the first quarter. Didn't do it in the second quarter. But once we got to the second half, it looked different. Changed the game and gave Georgia a chance to be sticking around in it there late. You have to grow, take every rep, and improve. I think that's what we're going to see. There's a lot left on the bone here for Georgia this year, but there's also a ton of work to be done to help them get there. But one thing's for sure, I am not tearing down the superstructure at the University of Georgia under Kirby Smart. I am a believer in the fact that he still knows how to coach football. And I'm a believer in this young team and what they can do the rest of the way. Go Dogs!
Told him, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told him.